Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally and today we are continuing the symposium that we started yesterday talking about good news. Yesterday's video was a bit odd and talking about gossip and how you can just be happy instead of actually identifying what the problems are. Kind of a head scratcher, but we'll see what this symposium has in store for us. Quickly before we get into it, don't forget to drop a like on the video. It helps get out to more people on YouTube and is very much appreciated. Now let's do this. Both will give you loose stool. That's the punchline.
Oh, okay. I see what you did there.
What is one thing every human possesses internally that cannot be detected by an X-ray or the human eye?
Imagination.
Well, it's our conscience. In fact, the Apostle Paul introduces the word conscience 26 times in the Greek scriptures, even expressing how at one point or another, all of us have been accused by our own thoughts. And it's true, all of us have felt guilty about something.
So this is what I like to call the ants in the pants talk. If you've ever been a Jehovah's Witness, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because what would happen at every single convention, every single year without fail, there would be a talk that would make everyone start squirming in their chairs because they'd be worried about, oh man, they're going to talk about confessing your sins or having a clean conscience before God. And the reason that everyone would squirm is because every witness sins. Everyone gets in trouble. They do things that they're not supposed to do according to the Jehovah's Witness rules, whether it's playing violent video games, watching a rated R movie, listening to different types of music, viewing pornography, masturbating, whatever the case is, there's something that a Jehovah's Witness is doing that they should technically go to the elders and confess, but they don't. At least that's been my experience with every witness I've ever known. Now, when you'd get this talk, everyone's like, oh man, I'm going to sit here and be sweating bullets and worried about, oh God, it's going to make me feel so horrible and awful. So if you've ever been a Jehovah's Witness, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is so bad that what we would do is you get like a little program that would tell you the name, the list, all the talks, and you would go through and scour that and be like, oh, yep. That's going to be the one. They're going to talk about something, and now everyone's going to be uncomfortable. That's going to be the ants in the pants talk. Now, we will skip through most of this talk because we don't need to subject ourselves to that. But they do give a personal example, or someone that's giving their own testimony, as if you will, about how they dealt with a time when they had a guilty conscience. And there's something fundamentally wrong with the thing she says. Let's take a look.
The feeling of guilt is so heavy. Can I ever be part of Jehovah's organization and feel good? Can I feel clean? And because the guilt made me feel like I wasn't. I would pray to Jehovah and just plead with him. I would journal how I was feeling, and then I would do the personal study. And when I was having a bad day, a real down day, I would look and see, oh yeah, this is how Jehovah feels. I felt a change in me when I studied about the ransom. Jesus died for everyone, even people who don't serve him. Then he died for me too. Feeling guilty can make you want to isolate. But I knew that was dangerous because there's no growth, there's no encouragement from anyone. Reaching out and associating with the brothers and sisters really helped me not be so self-consumed.
Hold on there, Debbie Downer. What are you talking about? Because the Jehovah's Witnesses that I knew and grew up with, if you did something wrong, you would literally be isolated from all of your friends and family. Even if you didn't get so far as to get kicked out of the congregation and disfellowshipped, which is like a hard stance, no one's going to talk to you. Even if you were just publicly reproved, as they would call it. So it's like you almost got kicked out, but we were a little lenient with you. People would still pull back from you and tell you, oh, sorry, we can't hang out for a few months, because you got to build yourself up spiritually and yada, yada. So when she says, oh man, I had to work hard at night isolating myself because, that could cause harm. Well, why do you think that they literally force people to isolate from someone that does something wrong? This is not an accurate portrayal of how it goes. So whatever she was guilty of or found guilty or whatever was making her conscience go all haywire, it must not have been that serious where she could still be associated with people within the congregation. Or this is the new look Watchtower trying to not seem so ridiculous with their punishments that they hand out for the most mundane, regular, everyday people being people types of things. Now, if that part of the story seems a little bit ridiculous, well, check out this.
When I was able to comment again at meetings, I started out small by saying like one word answers, and then maybe a longer answer or using a scripture. It gave me something to be proud of. Going in the ministry really helped me because I was talking about the wonderful hope of the future that Jehovah gives, and it was building my faith along with helping others. When you help others, it makes you happy. When I look back from where I was, feeling so guilty to where I am now, I really see the wisdom in Jehovah and his discipline. And it makes me feel proud. I'm very happy.
One word answers. I'm sorry, Debbie, but I do not believe you. I don't believe anything that you say because I cannot fathom a situation where you are a grown adult and you're going to raise your hand at the meeting, they're going to call on you and you're going to say, Jehovah, paradise, Jesus, apostate. That's not going to happen. If I'm wrong, then hey, I'll eat crow. Maybe she is telling the truth, but I cannot envision a scenario where someone in their 40s is going to talk in that way. Let's not spend too much time roasting her and her ridiculous story, even if it's true, who knows. And let's get on to the next part of this symposium, which is talking about how to combat the good news or bad news with good news, current events.
During the First World War, governments on both sides banned newspapers from publishing the complete casualty lists. And if ever a soldier wrote home from the trenches and described the bad conditions at the front, the governments would redact or censor out their letters. Why would they do that? The governments knew that bad news creates anxiety and discouragement. And when we look around today, there is no shortage of bad news, and it can have an effect on us today. We might worry, are my children safe at school? Are there microplastics in my water? Is the economy going to crash? We're bombarded with alerts on our phones, on the news, social media feeds. Even our conversations with our brothers and sisters can sometimes focus on what? The bad news. This can make us start to feel anxious. And when we feel anxious, we lose focus and start to slow down in our worship. So how do we regain that focus and defeat the bad news? Well, there's three ways that we can do that. The first way is to limit our exposure to the bad news. That doesn't mean that we ignore the bad news. We limit it. And now to illustrate, imagine you see a friend go to the fridge and pull out a carton of milk, and he sniffs it, and the milk is bad. It's sour, chunky. And then you see him keep going back to the fridge and sniffing the milk. And eventually he says to you, I feel nauseous. What would you tell your friend? Stop sniffing the milk. In the same way, do we need to rewatch senseless violence on the news for hours and hours? We know how it will make us feel. It's our first way: limit our exposure to bad news.
He's definitely oversimplifying this when it comes to World War I and censoring of newspapers. First off, they didn't have like agencies that were dedicated to keeping track of and publishing casualties, so I don't really know exactly what he's on about there. Second off is there's a lot more nuance. I know I'm a history nerd and I don't want to bore you guys with it, so I won't bore you, but there's like security reasons that you'd want to censor the soldiers' letters, because like, oh, we're outside this town. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to see you again, but kiss our daughter on the forehead for me, you know, and if that gets intercepted by the enemy, now it's a security risk. So anyway, it's not just because they didn't want people to feel bad. It wasn't that, oh, well, we want to protect everyone's feelings, so we want to make sure we censor those things out. That is not what was going on here, as he kind of makes it out to be. But what I thought initially when I first heard this was that they were going to do the classic Watchtower thing of, oh, bah humbug to the government, they're so evil, controlled by Satan. But they're kind of just taking a page out of the government's book. They're saying, hey, you know what? Let us censor information because that's a good thing. We'll basically protect people from that. So this whole thing about limiting your information is exactly what Watchtower wants to do. They want you to limit how much media you consume that's not within the JW cinematic universe. They don't want you going to a different brand. They want you to stay with them specifically. So that's their first piece of advice. Their second piece of advice is a little bit interesting because I don't really get how it's supposed to make someone feel better.
A second way is to connect the bad news to Bible prophecy. And for that, we have to turn to Jesus' words in Matthew 24. Turn with me to Matthew 24.
Nope.
But we might think, well, hasn't there always been these things? Well, true, but not to the extent and intensity. And Jesus helped identify the conclusion of the system of things with another prophecy in verse 14.
Make it double. Nope. Nope.
So it's these bad news, these events, at the same time as a global preaching campaign. Today, nearly 9 million people are preaching worldwide in over 1,000 languages. It's unprecedented at the same time as these bad events. In the same way, when we connect the bad news to Bible prophecy, we identify the period of time we're living in, and we can be excited about what's about to happen.
So he's trying to spin this as something that's, hey, look at the prophecies. You got to take into account the historic context, the times we're living in. And yet in that last video and the opening music video to this section of the convention, you had this scene where they were getting worried about getting hunted down by the government, by the police, by the Gestapo. They were worried about getting sent to the old gulag. And it was very stressful for witnesses, and they were made to feel that this would be a very stressful time. And if you read through the comments of that video, you'll see a lot of people talking about how stressed out they were about this specific time. So I don't know how that's meant to be comforting, because Jehovah's Witnesses, on an individual level and on an organizational level, recognize that this is a very scary, stressful time. So it's like, okay, there's all of this stressful, crazy stuff going on around you, and it's about to get a lot worse. Just thought I'd let you know. It's like when Patrick tells a story. Once there was the ugly barnacle.
He was so ugly that everyone died. The end.
That didn't help at all.
Now, the last talk in this symposium talks about discouragement, and honestly, it's pretty boring, except for this one clip.
We take the initiative to help whenever we see that there is a need. Don't you agree, friends, that it feels better for somebody to do something for us when they want to do it, when they're moved to do it, versus if they were being made to do it?
This is an odd thing, and only from the perspective of someone that's left the Jehovah's Witnesses. Because when you're in it, you think you are in the most loving organization in the whole world. You think you have thousands of friends and go anywhere and everything's so great and all happy, clappy, wonderful. And yet as soon as you leave, you find out that all of those people were a bunch of shit cans. They were just doing it because of a sense of obligation. That's what Jehovah's Witnesses are known for. That's what we do. That's how we take care of our brothers. It's like a party line. It's not coming from a genuine place of care or love. They're doing it because it's forced. And when you go back into it, or you have those interactions with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like the Stepford Wives. It feels like you're living in some sort of parallel dimension where everyone is just neuralized or lobotomized, and they just aren't, something's not there. Like the emotional parts of their brain are non-existent. And it's a bizarre feeling. So it's just a little odd hearing him say, oh man, it's so much better when someone really means it. Because in this guy's life, and I've lived his shoes, I've walked in them, he doesn't actually know what it's like to feel genuine human connection. Something that's not predicated on what you do for Jehovah's organization. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. Now, the illustration or the anecdote that they give in this one is a little bit sad, but let's just take a quick look at it.
My husband was full of life, full of energy, and he loved people. My husband became ill, and I needed a little more help family-wise, so we decided to move to Texas. We were actually ready to leave. We were ready to pull out. He noticed something that he needed to check with the vehicle that he was driving, and he was under the truck. It jumped and started to roll. I jumped out of the car and ran around, and he wasn't breathing, and it immediately killed him. Everything was just in shambles. We had no landing spot because everything was packed on our truck. Well, a sister came and asked us to stay with her. On the morning of the funeral, I dreaded thinking about what else we were to do for the rest of that day. When she brought us into the kitchen, it was just so bright and warm and cheery in comparison to the week we had just gone through.
So I find it strange that they're using this in the context of a talk about discouragement, because her husband just died, got ran over by a car in front of the wife and the kids. Like, saw it happen. We're not talking about like just discouragement. Oh man, I kind of feel bad. I'm a little bit tired today. Like, this is a tragedy. This is something very serious. And it's so sad to see how their solution for everything, whether your husband's run over by a moving truck as you're trying to move to another state, whether you just got a case of the winter blues, whether your husband's beating you, whether you're dealing with addiction, whether the cost of living is too high and you don't know how you're going to make it, their solution is always the same. Read the Bible and pray and keep up with your spiritual routine. All of these different things require a different approach. Someone going through a particular circumstance is going to need particular help. And yet they generalize everything. Anyway, that's about all I have to say about this symposium. A little bit shorter of a video, but we will get into the next set of talks, which have a new little drama series thing going on in it. So that'll be a little bit more exciting than this video. Sorry if this one was a little bit boring, but hey, it is what it is. It's the convention review. Sometimes we get bangers, sometimes we get some yawners, but it's all good. So with all that being said, if you're still around, don't forget to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Stay safe, be kind, and show yourself the same kindness that you show to others. And have a good ass day.